All right. Hopefully we're back up and running. During the practice round today, I was sitting here and I'd just gotten started with something, and all of a sudden I looked up and there was a question on my on the screen. It said something about where did the sound go, and I was like, oh great. So I looked down and my battery had died in the receiver over here. So anyway, we've been charging it ever since then. So that's how hour and a half. So it's fine. It is fully charged. But what I am worried about now is the battery pack running the camera. One time a couple of years ago, we were doing this, and we just had the worst time because the battery over here on this thing wasn't working well. So we tried to plug it in and run and charge it while we were using it. And everybody who was watching online, they were complaining about the noise. You know, it was a buzz sound and all that stuff. And so we finally got it charged enough, and we unplugged that, and so we got that. And then before too long, the battery pack for the camera also went out. It also died, and so people could hear it, but they couldn't see it. And so anyway,
That's not the charger that's plugged into the side of it?
Yeah, up there. Yeah, it's up on top. Yes.
Yeah, it's plugged in right there on the side.
No, that's the regular part of the camera. What's laying on top is actually the battery pack that's running that thing.
Oh, well, what's the cord that's plugged in the side?
That's what takes it from there to here.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
yeah, so the wire runs through the ceiling and all that. Yeah, man, top-notch operation around this place. All right, we got a few folks who are watching here. Actually, I'm not on here. I should get on here. Hold on just a second. People who are checking on, they're like, we don't care about all that. Okay. Well, it says I got 3 on here. It says I got 2 on here. Whatever.
I like your comment, the list you on your Facebook. I'm trying to say.
I don't know.
The page where you wrote your article.
Oh, the newsletter.
The
Oh, okay, I got you. Yes.
Kind of cute.
Well, okay, so yeah, if anybody's watching and you're not sure what she's talking about, our newsletter that we send out twice a month, my latest article was what to do when the preacher's boring. And so I've already had threats of people are going to actually put that thing into practice. So we shall see.
Kind of like the last one best.
Yeah. Which one was it?
What?
So anyway, if you don't get our newsletter, but you'd like to, we have we've got paper copies. We got paper copies and we got electronic copies. All you got to do is call the office and sign up for that. So, anyways, okay. But I'm just telling you right now, it could be worse, and I'm about to show you that as we talk about what happened on this date in history. Anybody know of any birthdays? Any personal birthdays or family or friends or celebrities?
Lizzie's birthday is Friday.
Okay, all right.
My child will be 32.
Just a youngin'. Okay, y'all got any birthdays up there? You can put it in the comment section. We've had a few more folks. Somebody left us. They don't like me just rambling on, but I'm telling you, just wait.
They're missing it.
Just wait. It could be a whole lot worse. Okay, well, I do have a few birthdays for you. Some birthdays that we can celebrate. First of all, on this date in 1924, happy birthday to George H.W. Bush, the senior Bush. Anybody know? Okay, I ask this every single time we have a president. What number president was he? Anybody know? Don't be Googling at home and then put it in the comments section like you knew. Anybody got a guess?
30-something, 39?
Nope. And I'm not good at this. I know the first one. I know the last. Well, I don't even know the number of the current one. But anyway, he was the 43rd president of the United States.
Well, at least I had the 3 in there.
And he was born in Milton, Massachusetts. Died in 2018. 1929. Happy birthday to Anne Frank. And of course, we talk about Anne Frank's diary. She also received that diary on her birthday. So on this day, I think that was in 1941 that she got that. But anyway, happy birthday to Anne Frank, who was born in Frankfurt. I don't know if that's a coincidence or not. Anne Frank, born in Frankfurt. But she died in 1945. 1930, happy birthday to Jim Nabors, Gomer Pyle. And also a singer, good singer in his own right. But he was born in Alabama. He died in 2017. For those of you who like sports, I don't guess y'all care about sports. Those who are in the room, we are very low in the room, but we don't have a lot of. We got people going on camps and mission trips and all that. But on this date in 1941, Marv Albert was born. Marv Albert, of course, is the great sportscaster. I think he's got a great voice for it. I've always enjoyed him, but he's retired now, I do believe. But he was born in New York City on this date, 1941. 10 years later, 1951, and this is, y'all don't shoot me, but I know I'm the pastor. I just can't help the music that I like. On this date in 1951, happy birthday to Brad Delp. Anybody know who he's associated with?
Absolutely not.
He's the lead singer of Boston. So, More Than a Feeling, sings a bunch of them.
Yeah.
But anyway, he was born in this date in Peabody, Massachusetts. He died in 2007. I've only got one death for you. And it actually happened today, and I did not know this. I don't know how they got this online so quickly, but today Jerry West died. He was 86 years old. If you keep up with basketball at all, the NBA logo, that's him. He was a guard, and he was also executive of the year several times. He's the one that built the Lakers into the powerhouse that they were 20 years ago and more. Built the Golden State Warriors. So anyway, died at 86. Okay, I've got a few events that I thought were interesting. You might not. It's not your show. Anyway, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Okay, on this date in 1775 was the first naval battle of the Revolutionary War. And we won, which is remarkable when you consider the power that the British Navy had in that day. But anyway, we won it, and then, of course, that was a microcosm of the rest of the war. On this date in 1849, the gas mask was patented. And who would have thought of that back in 1849? I mean, like, what gas were they trying to get away from? But anyway, it was patented by Lewis Harlett of Louisville, Kentucky. This date in 1918 was the first aerial bombing raid of American forces. Anybody know who they bombed?
In what day?
1918.
1918.
Yes. Wow. What did you think I said?
I heard 18.
Oh, no.
What?
Yeah, 1918. Who did we bomb for our first bombing raid?
Japan? France?
It was France. Yes, very good. You cheat. She cheated. Anyway, World War I. So I don't guess Japan was involved in all that, were they?
Probably not.
Yeah. 1922. This is for baseball fans, but I just thought it was interesting because I like sports. But the St. Louis Cardinals recorded a Major League Baseball and MLB record 10 straight hits on this date in 1922 against the Philadelphia Phillies in the 6th inning, and they went on to win that game 14-8. Couldn't happen to a better team. So anyway, 10 straight hits. That's just something pretty remarkable. The next year, 1923, was when Houdini did his famous escape from a straitjacket, being suspended upside down 40 feet in the air in New York City. And so when you're talking about somebody being a Houdini, they're able to escape situations and all that. This is where he got that most famous, at least what I know of, what I think of as the most famous of his escapes. So this date in 1923. Okay, now here's what I was getting at. I should take back that article. It's fun to listen to read, and kind of funny, but I know I'm not the most interesting person in the world, and I know that I can go a little long, just a little. But check this out. On this date in 1935, Senator Huey Long from Louisiana, he gave what at the time set a record for the longest continuous speech in Senate history. It was 15 and a half hours long.
I'm reading something about that.
Yeah.
Is that what they call a filibuster?
I guess I didn't really look into it, but 15 and a half hours continuously talking. His speech was 150,000 words long. Now I know I can go long, but I ain't never gone that long before. 15 and a half hours.
It's got that much to say.
Yeah. I know. I might as well read the whole Bible if I'm gonna do that, you know. So anyway, that's this date in 1935. The thing is I didn't research this either, but that record has been broken, and so who knows. So on this date in 1954, do not be Googling. Bill Haley and his Comets released their hit. What was it?
Rock around the clock.
Rock Around the Clock. This date in 1954. 11 years later. Yep, that should get us. Hopefully that'll get us through. Depends on how long I talk. So what I was saying is we're going to do a recap. We're doing that tonight because we've come to a good stopping point. We're going to stop for 6 weeks through the end of July. The first week in August, we're going to hear from our mission team that went out, or that will be going out to West Virginia. They'll be going out in July, and they're going to come back and give us a report. Then the second week in August, we're going to kick back into this thing, and it's going to be a time for people. I'm going to encourage people to come who maybe haven't been a part of the study. They don't want to jump in the middle of the study, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then I'll catch them back up to date. So forgive me for all of the, what do you call it? The recaps, summaries. But I also think it's good because, and here's why. I don't want to go through this just to go through it. I want people to have a grasp, an understanding of what it is that we're talking about by the time all is said and done. And I try to read people in the room and hear when people are talking. And sometimes I think, man, I really made that plain to understand. But then I look at people's faces and I'm like, well, maybe I didn't. So I just think it's good to make sure, because I think it just gives another perspective, and hopefully people can get an aha moment. I remember, and I think I've shared this before. I remember when I was sitting in French class in college, and I've been taking French all year long. I was halfway through, and this is when we were on the quarter system. And I remember I was on my last quarter, and I was halfway through that quarter. And he said something that was just really simple. He wasn't trying to make a big point about it. He just said something about l'objet indirect, talking about indirect objects. And when he said that word, a light went on, and I thought, that's what all this is about. And not everything, but so much of what I had been studying finally made sense. So, what I'm hoping is that by doing this, again, you just say something in a different way, you use some wording, or you might say the exact same thing. It's just that people are in a different frame of mind, and it hears it, and they're enlightened as to what it is that you've been talking about. So, all that to say that we're going to do kind of a recap on this thing, and it's also a great time. I mean, it really is. I can't think of a better time to ask questions just because of the nature of what tonight is about. I don't have a certain passage that I'm going to try to introduce anything new, any of that kind of stuff. We finished chapter 9. We're stopping it, and we're not going into chapter 10 except to refer to it at the end. And so it's a perfect time to ask questions about something we've already talked about, because that's what we're doing, is talking about what we've already talked about. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Okay, good. Okay, so here's the thing about the book of Revelation, is that obviously it has caused a great deal of confusion over the years, to the point that even in the early church there was a lot of bickering over whether or not it should even be included in our Bibles. Because you got to remember, and we talked about this when we went through the Route 66 study. Yeah, I know not everybody was in on that study, but when we were doing that study, we found that there was a lot of debate over several books. So, like another one, for instance, is the book of James. People wondered if the book of James jihad with the works of Paul, because it was so heavy on living and on doing, living out your salvation. And Paul was like, it's not about works. So they were struggling with this. They struggled with the book of Hebrews. And Hebrews is rough, man. It's tough to study that book, and it can be confusing and those kind of things. So anyway, Revelation was one of those books. And so people have, throughout history, they have read it differently. And I want to encourage you, just like I have 2 or 3 times already in the midst of this study, because we started this, back in September, I think, something like that, that just because somebody reads it differently than you do, just because somebody reads it different than the way that I'm teaching it, it does not mean that they don't believe the Bible. Because you can believe the Bible and think differently about the book of Revelation. Now, you can't read the Bible and misjudge how you get to heaven, or is there more than one way to get to heaven? That is unquestionable. It may not be popular in today's world, but it's not a question of what the Bible teaches. But what it's saying about the book of Revelation, it can be confusing. And so, just because somebody doesn't read it the way that you do doesn't mean they don't believe it, but it also doesn't mean that they haven't studied it and that they don't know it. And I've used this example several times, but it has been humorous to me, especially in my last church, where there was a significant, when I'm talking about significant size, significant number of people in my church there, that this is what they constantly wanted to talk about. They love to study the book of Revelation. Here, it hasn't gained as much traction as I had thought it would, but they loved it. And so I remember one time I was talking with somebody about something, and that, they didn't believe something the exact same way that we did, that somebody else I had read, and they're like, well, they just need to read the Bible then. Like, if they don't believe if they don't believe what we believe, they just need to read the Bible. Well, that's the thing, is they've read the Bible, they've studied the Bible. People who are much smarter about the Bible than I am believe it differently than I do. So that's the thing that we have to remember. So as we approach and have approached this, I hope that it's been made clear how we're going to read that, and that is, we're reading it the same way that we do like the Gospels. Now, it's not a gospel in the same way that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are, but we're reading it as a chronological unfolding of the story of what is to come. Now, there are certain parts of it that are symbolic in nature, and we've come across those with our study just last week. We found some things that are symbolic. It's not coming right out and telling us what this is. And so we have to do our best study to make sense out of it in today's language. But it is still an unfolding presentation of what the end will be like. Okay? So what we found early on is that and I hammered this, man, did I hammer this a lot? Y'all sick of hearing it? But had a great preacher one time tell me, until they're sick of hearing it, you hadn't said it enough. But the outline for the book is in Revelation chapter 1 and in verse 19. It says there, therefore write the things. And he's talking to John. This is Jesus talking to John. And he says, I want you to write some stuff down for me. Okay? He says, write the things which you have seen, and the things which are, and the things which will take place after these things. So there's the outline, because what you have is, he says, I want you to write down the things which you have seen. That is chapter 1. And again, you can go back, every single lesson here is archived. And so you can look at all the details there. The things which are, that's chapters 2 and 3, as he is addressing the churches in his day. And then the things which will take place after these things, and that is chapter 4 to the end of the book. So that is the outline for the book, kind of made it pretty simple for us. So we studied all that. We studied chapter 1. We looked at chapters 2 and 3, which are historical cities. They had historical churches in them. And you can certainly see the flavor of each church and each community that they were in portrayed in those letters to those churches. And so it's really cool to see that. But the lessons that he's giving each of those churches are lessons that modern day churches can take as well. And so we do. And that's what we did. We did the study of each one of them. We found out how their strengths and their weaknesses, how they can also be found in modern day churches like Emmanuel Baptist Church, your church if you belong to a different church, and I know several people who are on here do. We can certainly take truths from those things and apply them to our own location, just like we do the rest of the Bible. That's why we can go through and we can read the successes and the failures of David, or Moses, or Abraham, or Jonah, and we can read those and we can say, you know what, this is how that story applies to my life. Same thing with the churches. Okay? But then we get to chapter 4. Chapter 4 is chapters 4 and 5 are a great worship service, like the best recorded worship service ever, and is yet to take place. It will happen one day as preparation for the end times is being made. And so, and that will be after the rapture. And we did teach about the rapture. We teach that here, believe that to be true, where all of God's people who are saved at a certain moment in time that is yet to come, they will be raptured up. They will be taken up with Christ in the air and taken to heaven, so that we don't live through the tribulation. We have taught this from a pre-tribulational viewpoint. Pre meaning before the tribulation, we're exited, which is kind of what ushers it in, because then there is no protection. We are the salt of the earth. We are the protective force on planet Earth, as flawed as we are. That is what we are, and now there's none of that. And so that's when things are going to go haywire. So you got those, and then when you get to chapter 6, that's when like the fun begins. That's when 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 people say they want to study Revelation, that's really where they want to start. You know, they don't, not that they don't care about the first 5 chapters. That's not fair, but that's where things really get rolling. That's where they really get interesting, because then the judgments start falling down. Okay? So we get to chapter 6, and so I'm going to kind of turn this around so I can see this. I want to make sure that we're communicating well. I have been told, Andrew has warned me, that this board does not show up very well, and so I hope that cannot be the case, because I think this will help communicate, if you will. Okay, well, I needed to say those things anyway. I'll just leave them up there. Huh? Wow. Now I've really messed it up. I made it worse.
Issue or something?
No, I think it's just going to have to be something that's wet. But like I said, I'm going to write these things back up here anyway. I wanted to make it a surprise. I should have tried to erase it beforehand. So I'm going to put it back up here. So, when we talk about the tribulation and the terrible judgments that are going to come as a result of the tribulation, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about 3 sets of judgments. 7 judgments in each set. And so the first set of judgments are the seal judgments. The second set of judgments are the trumpet judgments. Third set of judgments are the bowl judgments. I mentioned that for there are different reasons that you can look at that we really haven't discussed as to why they're named what they are, but that's really that's how we know them: seals, trumpets, and bowls. And what is going to happen is they're all going to be terrible, but they're going to be more intense, and they will be more frequent as the 7-year period of the tribulation unfolds. And here's what we found out, is that in that 7 years, and we do believe that the tribulation period is a literal 7-year period, and we talked about why, and that's what we're teaching. There is a halfway point. This is at the 3.5-year period. And by the way, some people don't think that the 7 years is a literal 7 years. And that's okay. That's all right. But we do, just because it keeps saying it. Going back to Daniel and Ezekiel and Matthew chapter 24 and it just keeps talking about it. And then Paul talks about it in 2 Thessalonians, I think, and then we get it again in the book of Revelation. So we just take it. All right. So there's the halfway point then is 3.5 years. And what we saw is that the first 3.5 years, you only have 4 seals broken. Well, that's not true. You really have 5 seals that are broken. And it's between the 5th seal and the 6th seal that we get to the halfway point. So, seal number 6, and then all the rest of it, and all the trumpets and all the bowls are going to happen in the second half of the tribulation. So you see, there's just 5 that happen here, and that's what, 14, the 16 judgments in the last half is just going to come a lot faster, and it's going to get more and more intense.
At what point was the moment of silence? When they had everything was silent?
Well, that's actually happened a couple of times. It happened in chapters 4 and 5, or is it just chapter 5? I think chapter 5. And then, oh goodness, let me put this on. For those who did not hear, the question on the table was when was that silence? When was the silence? There's been a couple of things in chapter. Let's see. In chapter 8, at the beginning of chapter 8, as right before the seventh seal goes nuts.
That's the one.
That's yeah. And what we're finding is there's just been a lot of buildup, and all of a sudden there's the quiet just before the storm hits. Now the way that these things work, the way these judgments are going to unfold, is the seventh seal, when it opens up and that seal is broken, it gives way to the 7 trumpets. And when the 7th trumpet sounds, that judgment is the opening of the 7 bowl judgments. So that the illustration that I use, I've got a really good one, a new one that I'll give you here in just a minute. But the illustration that I used was fireworks, how you shoot up fireworks and they explode, okay? And then all those little offshoots, they'll go off like this, and all of a sudden, all those little offshoots, they'll explode also. They'll give way to more explosion. Well, the 7th seal gives way to more explosion. The 7th trumpet gives way to more explosion. No, I was talking with somebody at Natalie had a softball tournament in Brunswick on Saturday, and we got to talking about, have you ever seen a little spider, and you walk over to that spider and you crush it, and then 1,000 spiders shoot out, 1,000 little baby spiders shoot out. Have y'all ever had that?
No, all I know is if I see a spider, I stop and then I twist my foot.
Well, I guess living in the city, maybe y'all don't see it all that much. It happened several times when I lived in Jackson that you squish it and there are babies inside, and all of a sudden it's like 1,000 of them just squirt out and start going in 1,000 different directions, and you're like, what just happened? Well, that's kind of what the 7th seal is. It is the last seal. It opens and it unleashes all the trumpets, and the 7th trumpet sounds and it unleashes all the bowls. And so that's kind of how this is working. That's kind of how it is unfolding. And so what we've seen so far, here's where we are. We've gotten through chapter 6, are the six trumpets. Okay, I don't want to confuse anybody. It is that's where it tells us what the sealed judgments are like. Did I say trumpets? I didn't mean to say trumpets. The chapter 6 are the 6 seals as they are unfolding. And then we have a break in chapter 7, and it's because things have been so intense in chapter 6 that the reader is given, we are given a break to kind of collect ourselves, because, it really is, we know that it's going to be bad because we've talked about it before and we've studied it before and those kind of things, in the past and in different areas, different settings. But if you're reading this for the first time, it's like, whoa, this is crazy. And so we're kind of given a break. But also chapter 7 it's a meanwhile back at the ranch chapter, because it's going to say, okay, while all these horrible things are happening, here's something else that's going on from a heavenly perspective, and it kind of gives you another way to look at what's going on while these judgments are unfolding on the earth. That's what chapter 7 is. And so then when chapter 8 opens up, it jumps back in and it's going to open up the 7th seal, which is the 7 trumpets, the 7 trumpet judgments. And to this point in our study, we've gotten to the first 6 trumpets sounding. That's chapters 8 and 9. And it describes what those judgments are going to be like. And so when we jump back into it in August, we'll jump back in at chapter 10, and chapter 10 is going to be another interlude, another meanwhile back at the ranch scenario. While all these things are happening, like we've read about in chapters 8 and 9, there's also something else going on, and we'll see that in chapter 10. Now, the nature of these judgments, we have seen, oh goodness, I didn't know it was this late, but I'm almost finished. So we've seen several different things from every vantage point. All hell is breaking loose. And so here's what those judgments, you can put them, I put them. I'm sure there's better ways to do this, smarter ways, there's more detailed, more general, I mean, every way you look at it. There could be better ways to look at it. But it really kind of, for me, falls into three categories, and I can't think of any other place where this thing could happen. First of all, it starts there. It's in the heart of man. That's where judgment is going to be happening, because it's going to be man going to war with one another, and all the devastation that occurs because of warfare, the pestilence and the famine and all that kind of stuff. And so, first of all, you're going to have human beings will be the instrument of God's judgment. Then you have nature. And we've talked about on several different occasions, we've talked about earthquakes and volcanoes. I mean, from nature, it's going to come from the earth, it's going to come from the sky, it's going to come from the cosmos, from outer space, and those kind of things. 18. And so, but the second tool of God's judgment is going to be nature. And we've already seen this, you know. But then there's a third place that we really tend to overlook, because we are all about the here and now. We're all about the physical and those kind of things. But that is the supernatural. As we have seen in chapters 8 and 9, we saw demonic activity very clearly portrayed for us, and where demons will be released to torture, and then but not kill, but then they will be allowed to kill, and so this judgment is coming from every direction that you can imagine, from every direction that is made available to God. He's going to use as a tool to judge the earth. And so this is kind of where we have left. I mean, there really isn't anywhere else to go for this. It's just going to be more of the same, but worse. And so, yes. Okay?
At what point, and maybe I'm just listening too hard and thinking about, just picturing all this in my brain, where does the Antichrist come into all this stuff? Or has he been there since the first seal? At what point in this process does that person show up?
Okay, so the question on the table is the Antichrist. And I can't remember which chapter we're going to get to him, but what we're going to find is
We haven't gotten to him yet.
not in our study we haven't,
Okay.
but in the timeline he has been there, and we will find that out. So it's going to come back and it's going to basically say, while all this stuff is unfolding, let me tell you about this dude who's terrible. And what we'll find is he has been there the whole time. He has been setting things up, and he's the one who is going to. In fact, you remember, even though we hadn't been introduced to him, when we were talking about the very first seal being peace, we said that the Antichrist is going to be the one who's going to usher in that peace. Now, it's a false peace, but he is going to usher in peace, and he's going to promise peace. And then war is going to break out, and suddenly he's going to switch positions, and rather than being a master of peace, he'll be a master of warfare. He's going to be skilled at everything that he does. And so, yeah, he will have been here from the beginning, setting all this stuff up. And when we get to the 3.5 year period, that is where it is going to become blatantly obvious that he is the Antichrist. Because it will be at that point where that Jesus calls it the abomination of desolation. Paul used the same terminology in Thessalonians when he says that the Antichrist will then go sit at the throne of God and demand to be worshipped. That will be the abomination of desolation, which will usher in the second half of the tribulation, which the Bible calls, and we haven't made a big deal about this, but the Bible calls it the Great Tribulation. Like, this was bad.
That's worse than
But this is worse. Yeah.
each seal was progressively worse than the one before, and then it keeps going. The ones that come, each step is worse than the one before it.
I don't know if you could really,
That makes sense.
yeah, I don't know if you could look at it at a step-by-step process like that. I think as a general rule, you see the intensity rising.
That's what I mean,
But
that's what I mean.
yeah. So over time, over the long haul, yes, it's getting worse. Now, for instance, was trumpet number 3 worse than seal number 6? I don't know. That's a matter of opinion, I guess. But over time, yes, you certainly see it going in that direction.
I guess that's why, in all the teachings that I had on that, they're so crucial to witness, because I personally wouldn't want to be here again.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody else, you want to make sure people you question them about their salvation and lead people to the Lord, because like he said, it's going to be really bad.
And I think that's one of the lessons that we have to take away from it. Like, what does this mean for us? Well, what it means for us is, do you want your loved ones going through this? Not if you love them, not if you know what love is. So you do something about it. I mean,
It just makes me wonder, in the middle of all that confusion, that turmoil, the everything, how are people going to find God in the middle of that?
well, again, as we have seen in the past couple of weeks of our study, it's going to become blatantly obvious that people are going to, even people who have opposed God this whole time, are going to say, who can stand up underneath this? We recognize this is from God. Who's going to be able to survive this? That's what we saw. That was the question that ended chapter 6, is who can deal with this? And the answer is nobody.
You know what I be thinking about?
What's that?
That incident, what's going on right now in Israel and Gaza? And you remember how they snuck attack on them in October? And I said, and I hate to say this, but I said that to myself. I said, eventually that's going to happen to us.
It's
Because the Muslims are going to eventually, I believe, take over. And I think that's going to eventually, I hate to say that, but I think that's going to eventually happen to the United States.
well. I think that for me, what I would read into what we're seeing right now is how easy it is then for us to picture how it is going to unfold in Revelation, because we see parts of that already going on. We see the beginnings of widespread warfare. Of course, I know we've already had World Wars I and II and those kind of things, but you see it centered around what's going on in the Middle East and the tensions that are rising, and so it's easy to see how all these things could happen. It's easy to see the devastation of war when you look at Gaza. And whether you agree with what Israel's doing or not, I mean, I'm not here to debate that. I mean, I certainly have opinions like everybody else does, but that's not for me, the point is, we already see the famine like right in front of us. It's on the news, and how people are handling it. So you just see it. You can just see it all. I mean, you just see it. It's easy. All you got to do is open your eyes. So, anyways, all right. If y'all got any questions at home, hey, same people I think have stuck with us through this whole thing. If you got any questions, type them in. Type them in. You got a few minutes. Well, actually, it's 7 o'clock. I'm supposed to be. Well, you're in choir. Sorry.
No, I'm just trying to catch the rest, because it was quite interesting what you were just talking about.
Yeah. Well, we'll do it again. We'll talk about it again. Maybe I'll leave a little bit more time for questions next time. So, anyways, all right. If you got any prayer requests at home, type those in the comment section real quick. Any questions in the room about anything we talked about? Okay.
I just play it in my mind, but these science fiction movies and these movies that they're doing, war movies and stuff with all this special, that ain't got nothing on what we're reading here.
Yeah.
It's very visual to me, and I'm just like,
And And that's the beauty of the thing. I know people are scared of it. It scares people and they kind of
Oh, it's a,
push it away.
it's a very scary thing.
But I think it's even, I remember when I was in college, there was a class, and I didn't take it. I probably should have, but it was called The Bible as Literature. And it didn't really look at it necessarily as the inspired Word of God, just literarily speaking. And it's a beautiful literary piece.
And so I
So.
tell you, there's some parts in there that, kind of racy.
Yeah.
I mean, really, yes.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of soap opera in there.
Oh,
So,
yeah. I mean,
anyway.
it's got any kind of presentation you think you can watch on television, that's it.
Not that anybody here would watch soap operas, of course.
But just read it, you know, I mean, anything you can find a book on at the store, hey, we got it all right here, one neat package for you.
Yep. Okay, all right. Well, let's. Any prayer requests in the room?
Basically, just the same, you know, she's got a doctor appointment, and she is taking the medicine, but I just want her legs to go down. Or either find out what is actually causing them to swell, because it could be several different things.
Okay.
But she's up and about, I mean, she probably shouldn't be, but she is.
All right. And speaking of requests we've already made, but Jimmy Shoup stopped by the office, I don't know, a couple hours ago, and obviously he's having a hard time. 64 years, and they did everything together, and now she's gone. So, anyways, all right. Well, let's pray, and then we'll go. God, as always, we thank you for the time where we can get together to study and to talk about your word and what it means to us. And we thank you for the vivid portrayal of what is to come. We also thank you for the end, which we have not gotten to, but very, very clearly we know that you win, and that all those who are found in you, we become victorious as well because of you. So we thank you for that assurance, and just help us to remember when we get caught up in the small things of life or in the negative things of life. Remind us that in the end, you will reign and good will win out. So we just thank you for those assurances and encourage us, especially when times get dark. God, you know the requests that we have. Some have been mentioned out loud, just a couple, not many. But if we really kind of open up our hearts and minds, then a lot more would come flooding out. But you know about all those as well. You're good like that. You know what's on our minds, and in fact, you know a whole lot more about those things than we do. So God, we place those things in your hands, and we trust you with them. Just teach us to trust even more than we do, so that we have faith even when things don't go our way. Thank you for our time together again. We look forward to being together on Sunday, and may that time of worship be sweet. And I pray that your people would make worship of you a priority, and we'd show up in Mass to talk about how great you are. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Thank y'all. Thank y'all for watching at home. We'll see y'all.